we get hit up, as far as IT goes, we get hit up with these, you have to upgrade now. We get it when we look at the computer and it says, your Flash player is out of date. You have this many updates for Windows. You have this many updates for Office. You don't have the latest version of this. I mean, Apple has made this into a zombie feeding frenzy when they come out with the next iPhone. If you don't have one, you've just joined the Amish. Congratulations. All right, and the problem is that's marketing. Now, sometimes marketing, there's actually value there, and sometimes there's actually meaning. But here's the problem. It's not the same for everybody. So one organization or individual who's judging with their values on what they use technology for is going to be different than another. And that's part of what we're going to talk about. So we'll talk about what the impact is of the XP, but we're not going to give solid 100% answers. Partially because we're consultants, we don't give simple answers. What's the consultant's credo? If you're not part of the original problem, there's money to be made in prolonging the solution. So what is obsolete? In terms of this discussion, and by the way, if you have questions, absolutely bring them up. Or you have points, bring them up. Obsolete, it's no longer used. It's out of date, which is such an arbitrary term. Everybody gets to choose what that means. It can't perform necessary tasks. And like I was saying, it's not what the consultant is selling. Oh, you don't have the latest. Oh, let me tell you how obsolete whatever it is you have is. I don't even care what it is. I'm going to tell you how obsolete it is. Okay? Now this is where I will probably knock something down. I bought this at a secondhand furniture store. It is actually an electric, I really hope I don't land this on your phone. It is an electric typewriter. Yeah, bought it for 60 bucks. It still types, I think. It still would be good for putting in a memo, writing out a ticket, that gets then slapped on a product to go out. It can still do whatever the heck the typewriter thing. Well, actually, it's wireless. And it's kind of funny because when I bought this, we were in a consignment shop looking for stuff. My daughter just moved into her first house with her husband, and we were looking for, and I saw that, and they had a sign on it that said, "Has wiring problem, do not use." And I thought, oh, that's clever. A typewriter has wiring problems. Oh, it actually does. So anyway, technically, this device performs everything it was meant to do when it was first purchased. There's nothing, if it worked, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not obsolete. But can it perform the necessary tasks? Well, if you accept the fact that the tasks that are necessary are not the same as they were when that thing was bought, then the answer is no. But if you're stuck with, that's all we do, we just do tickets, we just do this, we just do that, the answer is, if you're just doing the same thing, then it's not obsolete. It does exactly what you bought it for. And extend that to all of the technology that's used within an organization. And I apologize, we're going to be talking about mostly from an organization standpoint, not necessarily from an individual standpoint. So we've got that. Or I can be really cool. How many of you were here for the Google Glass demonstration? Do you notice this is a different color? Do you know why this is a different color? It's mine. Yes, I've joined the Borg. I now have the absolute latest. We're probably at least 6-8 months from this being available to the open market. I am now part of the Google Glass Explorers. So you take a look at this versus this. Now, this is really, really cool because it integrates everything. Okay, it doesn't integrate everything because this doesn't integrate with Office 365 yet, so it doesn't integrate with my email, but I can use some Google stuff to cause it to integrate. Okay, well, I don't really use the Google stuff to integrate it because those tools don't necessarily synchronize with each other, but I read a blog article that lets me, okay, the blog article wasn't really accurate.
Does it integrate with my 8088?
If we slam it down hard enough, yes. But here's the thing. This technology is limited because it's so new, it doesn't integrate with all the stuff that I take for granted that I want to be able to do. So we have right here these two extremes. And both of them have a certain level of pre and post obsolescence. And companies have to recognize when they invest in technology, they don't jump so far ahead that they're paying for the sizzle. Now, in my case, we're paying because these are coming. Intel's working on their own, Microsoft's working on their own, everybody's working on their own, so these things are coming and they're coming fast. And part of our job is to help make sure that companies know what's coming. So this is an investment. This is actually good business sense. But I am not, unlike some people who aren't here right now. Brandon just walks around and he's just got these things on it, you know. And the interesting thing about Brandon, he's got a girlfriend. That's a fashion statement. Absolutely. You know, for some people it is. It absolutely is a statement of this is what I've got. You know.
So what do they do?
I don't know. Anyway,
that was a serious question.
Yeah, and the answer is the jury is still out. And part of the reason is for this is because the actual development toolkit is not publicly available yet. But essentially what this does is this allows me to see in a heads-up display to be able to see what I would normally be seeing on here and to use hand motions here or audio to control it. So I could say something just as simple as show me directions to and give an address out, and it will immediately bring up the maps and bring up the GPS. And I will say, boy, the voice recognition is solid on that thing. Actually, there's been an instance that went further than that. So what happened was a surgeon was performing surgery, because that's what they do, and he checked with the patient ahead of time, and he was one of the Explorer group, one of the initial, and he asked whether or not it would be okay for him to use this, and this has got a camera and display, to actually connect another surgeon who was a specialist on the procedure to essentially watch the operation. And during the operation, a complication occurred. And it was not the glass fell into the, you know, that I'm aware of. But the doctor, the surgeon, was immediately able to ask questions of the specialist who was seeing literally that surgeon's view, pretty much real time, and get that second consulting opinion. No real setup, boom, there. No interruptive cameras, no other equipment. That was there. Now think of it from a safety force standpoint. You know, one of the things, because we deal with a couple fire departments, and one of the things I like is when a fire person is in a situation, if they can see where hazardous materials are. Because the state requires registration of hazardous materials in terms of where they are, what they are, and all that kind of thing. If there's a fire going on, and that person can see in a non-invasive, because this doesn't get in your line of sight, this gets above it. So essentially, as I'm looking forward, it's about the same position as that Christmas ornament is. So I have to look up in order to see the screen, but it's very prominent, very easy to read. So there are a lot of services that are possible with these. They're not there yet. They're not there yet. And it's all going to be about service. And actually, we'll talk about service as that goes. So, but anyway, my key thing here is I just want to show you the two extremes. Each extreme has their own value. Each extreme has their own cost. And one of the biggest issues for organizations is for them to understand where they want to be on that scale between the two. There is no right or wrong answer as long as you're aware and accept the risks and the benefits and the cost. And if there's anything you take away from what we're talking about, that's it. Because everything else is subjective to that value. Okay? And this is kind of obsolescence for a geek. Does it work? Yeah, this works really cool. Unless I want to do the following things, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to be stereotypical here. Traditionalist manufacturing. Okay? Because manufacturing, they try to use because it's capital investment for their equipment, they try to use stuff till it actually breaks. Yeah, does it power up? If it powers up, no, it's not obsolete, it works still. Yeah, I saw a light blink when you hit that switch, it still works. Yeah, but what about the smoke coming out? Okay? it gets back into that. Where is your organization? And it's okay to say, we're here except for this. And we'll talk about some of those examples. But it still works. Rube Goldberg, anybody? You know? This is basically how he brushes he gets toothpaste on his toothbrush. And the reason I show this is, number one, I like Rube Goldberg. But number two is, in a lot of cases, obsolescence has been patched by we have shortcuts. We have ways to get through this. Yes, our old computer system doesn't give us that information, but Ralph made an Excel worksheet. And as long as we enter the data into the Excel worksheet, that will print off a report that we can then use to call the vendor to place the order, who will then send us a bill of material. We can use the bill of material to get their production numbers, and that's what we put into our computer system. So we have these 4, 5, 6 steps, and it works. It gets the job done, but with every one of these steps, we've added friction. Friction is wasted energy. We've added those steps that we need to do in order to accomplish whatever the heck the task, in this case, put toothpaste on a toothbrush. In the other case, to get an order placed into a system. The more frequent that happens, how many orders do we have to place? How often are we brushing our teeth? For me, I do it every month. Okay, it's important. The more you do it, the more friction, the more cost. And it's not just cost for the person doing it. What happens when that person's on vacation? When that person's on vacation, okay, somebody else has to know these arcane rituals that have to be done. What happens if that person leaves? We have to train somebody to be out of date. What happens if the guy who did the Excel worksheet leaves? And no one has a clue. We can look at the worksheet and we understand what those formulas do, but we don't know what it means. And we're changing the product. So we get caught in inopportune ways at inopportune times, not knowing why we're doing these things.
So are you saying that some software is also going to become obsolete with the advancement of the hardware that's coming out? So you're saying Excel is going to become a thing of the past?
Excel 2003, absolutely. Excel 2000 already, Excel 97 already, Excel 95, Excel 4.3, Excel 4.0. I can go on forever because I'll just start making numbers up. But yeah, so you have that as well. In some cases, like Excel, usually it's not traumatic. Usually they'll let you use the older files, older versions, all that kind of thing, with the exception of the X that they put at the end of the document. It was 97, 95? Right, that was 07, yeah, okay, cool. But take other applications such as AutoCAD. AutoCAD will not support two or three versions behind. Ala, you're our expert now on that one. Got the scar. 2 versions behind. So if you have 2 versions behind on your AutoCAD programs and you run into a problem, they will not help you at all. Even if there's no way that the user can upgrade because that program is required for a piece of equipment. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, software becomes obsolete. And it becomes obsolete because it's not available to be used on new hardware. And it also becomes obsolete because it doesn't fit what your mission is today. You know, there are people, and again, I'll focus on manufacturing companies who are using software literally from 2000 or so. And e-commerce was this great thing, which, I mean, I hate to say this because it's a little off color, that was really driven by porn at that point in time. You know, now it's everything. So, metaphor of the day, the toad in the water. When we talk about toads, anybody know the toad metaphor? Okay, you're going to learn, here's your second thing you're going to learn because it's really cool. If you take a toad, you have a thing of boiling water, and you start to put a toad in. You don't actually do it. The toad will recognize something really is lousy that's going to happen to me and try to get away. Because it recognizes, it's cold-blooded, it recognizes the delta, the change in the temperature. If, however, you take a toad and you put it in a room temperature pot of water, then you turn the burner on, The toad will boil to death because the toad will not recognize the gradual increase of temperature and will basically just stay there. A lot of companies are that toad. You start with technology that worked fine for your organization in 2003, and here it is 10 years later, and it actually, because you've got all of these gyrations, it still works for you. We've got all that additional friction, wasted heat, but it still works. Come on. And companies don't recognize that fact. Now, I want to be real clear here. There are some companies who are doing very, very well with 10, 15-year-old technology, and they know what they can't do and what they can do, and they're fine. But there's a lot of companies who don't realize what they could be doing. And that's the key difference, all right? But the issue is whether or not companies recognize how boiling the water is getting, how convoluted. And this you need to have that little internal review, whether it be somebody from the outside coming in and helping you, gosh, who would that be? Or you do it yourself. It doesn't matter as long as it's realistic. And realistic on both sides of the fence, because you could have a situation where the people inside the organization are delusional. Oh yeah, everything's fine. Come on. Why are you saying things could be bad? They're fine. Or you could have the motivated delusional. Yes, you need to upgrade everything. And here's a proposal that we'd love to have you upgrade everything because then you buy a lot of stuff from us and we make a lot of money. But here's the thing, and actually I also do a blog called Crotchety Old Geek, which is me just ranting, and I only do 1 or 2 takes of those things, so they are not the smoothest things. But I actually talk about that, and I talk about 2 aspects in terms of rolling out new technologies and new options. One is WIFM, and the other one is NIMBY. If you do not look into these 2 aspects about rolling out any new change to an organization, you've decreased the chance of success by at least 50%. Anybody heard of either of these? NIMBY is not in my backyard. That's a great idea. Don't do it around me. Don't change my life. And the other one is WIFM. What's in it for me? If you introduce a technology without clearly defining some way of how the end user, the people who are going to be saddled with this change, how their lives are going to be made better, and by better, them personally, not their department, it's going to be tough. And if you are going to go to them and say, yes, we're going to make you do more work, but your boss is going to be happier, yeah, they may suck up and say, well, then I want to do it. But deep down, you're going to get a resistance. So in any kind of technology change, look at the WIFM, look at the NIMBY. And in a lot of cases, it's here are some things. It's going to be rough for a week or so because there are new ways of doing things. But once you've learned this, you're not going to have to listen to all this stuff and about that bird and all that bird poop you got to clean up. You're not going to have that bird poop anymore because the bird's going to be gone. Yeah, now you have to unscrew the toothpaste cap, but here's the benefit. And you need to put them in that context. But the other thing I would also point out is hiring new employees. If you hire a new employee and your organization right now is warm and happy in this boiling water, but then you bring a new toad into the mix, toad is an employee. Yeah. Yeah. They're going to look at that and go, are you kidding? You're using that outdated software. Why don't you just, because my last company, I did it and we just did it in 2 steps. Why do you have these 6 steps? Well, because we don't use that. We use this and this is, oh, I wonder if they filled my position yet. And I call this down training. Okay? Old employees in management, they're happy in the boiling water. Not always. Sometimes they actually do see, hey, we need to get change. But those are the people who already recognize the need for change. I don't care about them anymore. Sorry, ha. But then we've got new employees who are brought in. They're going to be tossed into the boiling water if they recognize what's going on. Okay? And you have to recognize, in some cases, they're happy because it is appropriate. Okay? And in some cases, they're annoyed because they just want their tool set. you have to recognize the differences between them. And how much do you have to train a new employee not to do it the way that just makes perfect sense? Yeah, you could just, yeah, but no, don't do it that way. Yeah, because that won't work because you have to go back and then redo and do this. So instead, we do this, this, and this, and then we do that and the other thing. Yeah?
Bob, isn't that the reason that a lot of the young people take a job and they're not there more than 6 weeks?
Yeah, I heard that they're not there longer than 6 weeks. Unfortunately, that rule hasn't really been always as successful as I wanted it to be. That's a whole different story. I mean, you could get into the motivation versus self-motivation versus, you could also look at companies, and companies aren't investing anywhere near as much as they used to in terms of training and supporting employees. So it's a mutual, yeah, catch you later. What have you done for me lately environment. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also do think that if you've got someone, and I gotta believe in my generation, who we were not the greatest generation, okay? My dad and his brother they fought Hitler, they Korea, all that. My generation fought disco, and we lost. But in any case, had we gone to a company that had levels of technology ridiculously out of date with no hope whatsoever of catching up to where we were, I'm not sure I would have stayed. I mean, I did, when I first got into, the only reason I'm pointing this out is because we tend to poo-poo the young kids and all that, just like my elders did when I was getting into the workforce, and it seems like every generation talks down. I did everything I could to get away from punch cards. When I entered into IT, they were still doing punch cards. And I am proud to say that I actually had a job that I did, a consulting job for about 8-10 months that involved punch cards, and I was always able to find somebody else to trick into doing the punch cards. But in any case. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the hardware for a bit, and I don't want to get too much into it because it changes every year, and who cares? You don't need to, for purposes of this discussion, we don't need to know the specific numbers. We need to know just the concept of them to see what's going on. All right, so the metaphor I use for this is a library. Let's just take, and we'll just use we'll start with a single room, and that room is a server. It is a computer. And a person sitting at a table, that person is the processor. It's doing the work. Well, how much work can it do? Well, the faster that processor is, the faster the person is, the more work they can do. Or you can put more people at that table, more processors. Okay. Well, how much work can they actually do? Well, they can only work on stuff that's on the table, memory. The more memory we have, which is the electric stuff, when you turn the computer off, it gets lost, the more work they can do, and they can work very quickly. But if they need to get additional data, they have to get up, this is where the metaphor, just work with it. And they have to get data off the hard drives, the storage devices, which are the bookcases. And they have to go look for stuff on the bookcases. In some cases it's faster, in some cases it's slower, in some cases it's indexed, so you can find it very quickly, in some cases it isn't. But to then get that information and load it into memory, place it on the table. They can then make changes to it on the table, and when they're done, they take it and they put it back on the bookcase. That's how servers work. And really, it's how workstations work. The more or faster of any of those we have, the better. So, okay, we're going to index stuff. We index stuff, now we've got to maintain the indexes. Anytime we add another book, we add more file, more data, we have to write index cards that goes into the card catalog. Whatever. So you get the idea. Other rooms are other servers. So if we need data from another server, we have to basically get up, walk over to the other room, get the data off that bookcase, and bring it over. And the hallway may be busy because there's other servers that are all going after the data and all that kind of thing. So that's the metaphor we're going to start with. Servers around 2007, give or take, we basically had 1 or 2 processors. Now, you can have a ridiculous number of processors. Okay, so you can have a lot of people at that table doing work. Okay? 32-bit platform, now 64. For all purposes, a 64-bit is a smarter processor, a lot smarter processor. So it's kind of like I'm a 32-bit and Kevin is a 60. No, Allah, you're a 128-bit processor in my mind, dude. Yeah. Not really. No. So we say Kevin is a 64. So 64 is pretty much the rule of thumb now. You know, 6 years ago, yeah, you could do 64, but there were challenges there. Maximum of 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's how big the table was. Now, you could go up to 2,000 gigabytes. All that room on the table. Okay? Hard drive space. We've gone from 2003 to 2003 R2 to 2008 to 2008 R2 to 2012 to 2012 R2. Just a normal server operating system is upgraded 4 times. Network connectivity, how fast we can talk between devices on the network. Back then, we were pretty much 100 megabits per second. Now, a gigabit per second. What's a bit? It's a unit of measurement. It's a 1 or a 0. But for purposes of this discussion, it's just a unit of measurement. More is better. Okay? Now, the other thing is usually when you buy hardware, you also want somebody to fix it when it breaks. Most manufacturers will come, especially if we're talking servers, with a 3-year warranty. And you can usually extend that another 2, maybe 3 years, depending upon the manufacturer. Beyond that, that's usually it.
How much is that planned obsolescence?
How much is what?
How much is that support
Intentional.
intentional? Planned down the road, 2 to 3 years, you're going to you need me.
Well, let's put it this way. If we look at it, we can do it from an optimistic or a pessimistic standpoint. Let's do it from a pessimistic standpoint because they're all thieves out there, except for simplex-it. From the standpoint of, okay, they want you to buy more stuff. The problem is that there's another vendor out there, if that was truly all there was, there's another vendor out there who will undersell them by not making you do that. And you're going to get into that issue where they're going to offer the same product but for a lower price. The other option, or the optimistic, which really isn't nicer, but is the stuff is newer. And there truly are. These are not meaningless differences. These are meaningful differences. These truly impact the value of the hardware. So a server that cost you, let's say, $4,000 6 years ago, you can't buy that level of performance. People would laugh at you. They said, go to Best Buy and buy a desktop for your kids and use that. So you really are looking at significant improvements. So it's an obsolescence by improvement, okay? Similarly, you now have 2012 R2 operating system, which if you look at that versus 2003, there are significant improvements in terms of what you can do. Now notice, I did not say significant improvements in what you need to or want to do. If you're not interested in virtualization, then the Hyper-V thing, who cares about? If you're not interested in security and encryption, then some of the BitLocker stuff, yeah, who cares about that? If you're not interested in yada, 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 yada. But more and more of those features, even small businesses should be interested in if they're looking to keep up in terms of how secure they are. And by secure, I mean just availability as well as, no bad guys getting in. So it's a mixture. Does that make sense? Cool. Now, what has happened as far as driving money, and I've said this before, how many people are running XP in Office 2003? Okay, you people are evil. All right? Because you have not contributed to Microsoft since whenever it was you bought that. So you have not given them any money. You are what is keeping this economy in the dumps. You should be ashamed of yourselves, and please return your food immediately. Oh. Okay, Microsoft recognized that basically there were a lot of people who would buy the product and then that was it. And it was a nice donation to Microsoft, $600-800 for Windows and for Office. But, so what they did, and they started this in 2008, is now they come out with a new product every 2 years. So let's talk servers. Server 2008, in 2008. 2008 R2, 2010. 2012, 2008 R2 was in 2010. 2012 was in 2012. 2014 is 2012 R2. In 2016, it'll be 2016. Windows Vista, followed by Windows 7, which is Windows Vista R2. And then 2 years later, they come out with Windows 8. Office, I got a little bit behind the ball on that one. They went Office 2007, then 2010, then 2013. So they're doing a little more like 3 years. So they're coming out with them more and more quickly. And what they want to do is they want you to upgrade. So they're turning into a recurring revenue model, and they're going to charge you a ton less upfront. And because they do that, they will get a continuing revenue stream from you, and you get access to the latest and greatest. If you were to keep up with the latest software, this is actually going to be a much less expensive method for you. If you only want to do the I bought it once and I never upgraded again, this is not going to be, it's not going to be as useful for you. Now, is that planned obsolescence? No, it's planned revenue. You know, the obsolescence part, that's an interpretation, if you will. Switches. The switch is basically the traffic cop. That's the thing that's all the cables for all your computers are plugged into. Only point I make here is that it used to be, 6-7 years ago, 100 megabits per second was the standard. Now, if 10,000 megabits per second, but at least 1,000 megabits or a gigabit switch should be the default. So the speed which the stuff is communicating is significantly higher, and managed so that people can actually look at it externally and say how well is it performing, good, bad, or indifferent. Firewalls and routers. Here's the thing. I don't want to go into this too much. What's a firewall and a router? Really, it's if I want to send information not to this building, that's a router. Where else does that information go? If I want to see yahoo.com, my request for that information when I type in www.yahoo.com will actually go through a router which will figure out how to get that information and bring it back. Those also devices can and often are integrated into a firewall which protects us from the bad guys getting in and out and all that. All right, those are getting a lot easier. So companies now, used to be a very expensive endeavor or very frustrating endeavor to say, we want people to work remotely. Now, it's becoming a lot easier to do that. There's still some expense involved. But to have securely people to be able to actually do work from home, at least that's what they tell me they're doing, you know, it's a lot easier to do that, and that's because of this technology to a degree. And storage. It's getting cheaper. Whether you store stuff on your servers, you store stuff in the cloud, you store stuff wherever. One of the nice things about this is it's becoming also easier to have it stored in multiple places. So when I did this PowerPoint, I did this on my laptop. If I were to go and boot my tablet up, it would be there. If I looked on my phone, it would be there. If I go to the website that has our storage, it would be there. If I went to a desktop that I have at my office, it would be there. All that information is mine, and it's secured, but no matter which device I'm using, I can get access to it, and I don't have to be all convoluted and, you know, remember this path and this path and this password. It's all integrated. So, which is pretty cool.
How secure?
Probably more secure, and this is going to sound flip, probably more secure than your network is currently, if you've got a network from 5 or 6 years ago. Now, the challenge is that when you start opening up your storage and your distribution of information so that you do want that kind of flexibility, you've got a trade-off that's going to happen. And that trade-off is the security versus ease of access. The metaphor I use for that one, I love metaphors, sorry, is if you live in an apartment building and you've got a key to the outside door and you've got a key to your apartment, and supposedly the key to the outside door is to keep non-residents out from the apartment unless they're let in by somebody who knows them. And you open up your front door, and right behind you, 10 feet behind you, is someone who has all sorts of shopping bags, and they're obviously struggling. Do you hold the door open for them? You don't know who they are, okay? If you hold the door open for them, congratulations, you just let the terrorists in the building. You just committed a total horrible breach of security if we're going to take that model seriously. Okay, so you slam the door in their face. You're a jerk. And you know, from a company standpoint, you have to recognize where do you want to be between the two. Or you could also invest a lot of money and have like iris scanners so that the person could just hold their eye up and it would recognize. So we could also invest a lot of money to make it so that we can be a little bit of both. But we have to make that decision as far as how to be. So In the case of if you have somebody who's using iCloud, then it's only as secure as that person makes iCloud to be. Literally, we had one of our clients who was storing company documents on their iCloud, and the person called me aside and said, my kid was using my iTunes account, which meant that he had the access to the iCloud account as well, and it turns out he gave those credentials to his friend so that he could download some stuff on iTunes. And it turns out he gave it to somebody else. So because he was using this one tool of convenience, which was made for a personal, as an organization, the organization is not secure. They're as secure as that person was in terms of sharing that information. Okay? So that's your first line of I'll say, defense. Now, there are tools that you can use that are a bit more expensive that actually will do top-level control so that you, as the administrator of that service, can actually decide whether or not that person can get it from any device or can only get it from their laptop. In other words, they couldn't go to a website and type in, even if they had the password. So does that help? Okay, cool. SSD, solid state disks. So what happens is, right now, when you use the hard drive, using the library metaphor, it literally is spinning platters. That there's a reader, and these spinning platters for a personal, they're about 5,400 RPM? 5472. Okay, pretty fast. And then the head goes back and forth and literally reads off of pieces of that drive. Okay, really fast by yours and my method. But memory, the RAM, is electronic. It's electrons flowing. Not quite speed of light, but getting up there. So the memory is going to be, so an SSD is actually memory much, 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 much faster. Dell was stupid because they would put out servers that would have like 500 gig of storage, and yet they would only partition the C drive for like 100 meg. Was it 128 meg? Was that the?
It was like 12 gig.
12 gig, I'm sorry, it wasn't even that big. Yeah, it was a 12 gig partition. So they would just do a horrible job of allocating space on the servers, which meant that 3, 4, 5 years later, everybody had these huge, wide open sets of space on the system, but where the server really needed it, they had next to nothing. And so that was a very common thing that Dell did. And actually, I think HP and other guys did it as well, but Dell was really good at it. Connectivity is really important from the standpoint of, especially when you get into cloud. That's how fast you can get information from outside of your location. And what happens is that our local connection, which is where you have the wires plugged in, and even to a certain degree wireless, but mainly the wired plugged in, we have 100 to 1,000 megabits per second up and down. So if you're connecting to something that's inside the building that you're in, it is very fast. You can see by comparison how fast all of the other connections are, and everybody's fighting for that connection. So if you have 30 people in your building, all 30 people are trying to connect. If they're all going out to the internet at the same time, they're all trying to connect using whatever connection you have. Okay? So you may have, if you're getting a file off the server, you may have a 100 or a 1,000 megabit per second connection. And that's great. But if you try to download that same file from the outside, you know, if you've got a T1, which used to be the cat's meow, if you've got a T1, that's it, 1.5. Now, I want to be real clear here. Cable and fiber especially, wildly different. Because different ISPs, different internet providers have packages that can be higher than this, they can be lower than this. You're pretty much going to be, you know, for fiber, you're going to be less than 20. And you either are going to be in a geographical area that you're just lucked out, or you're going to be paying a huge fee to get that. So usually we're somewhere here between these three. As we get more and more cloud-based, it's going to be the competition for these resources is going to get tougher and tougher. So the cloud is great because you don't have to buy servers, you don't have to buy hardware, you don't have to buy any of that stuff. But absolutely, absolutely, if you ever do anything cloud-based, ask the question of whether your connectivity is going to be enough. The other question is, and I just point this out, is why is it slow? We all have situations where we run into either an application, a computer, a server, or whatever. Why is it slow? And a lot of us just jump to conclusions. It's slow because you need a new computer. It's slow because you have too much stuff on. It's slow because you were in a hurry and weren't willing to wait. Whatever. It's very easy these days, especially if you partner with a company like simplex-it. It's very easy to actually pull out metrics, to actually measure. So in this particular case, this will show you that this is one computer over a period of time and how much memory they had available. And you can see that they only had really 300 megabytes, not a lot of memory. And they kept throughout the day going down to pretty much, 75 we consider the threshold where, yeah, you really need some more memory. And we were going even lower than that rather frequently. And in this particular case, we could then go back to the customer and say, hey, this machine, it looks like it's pretty slow. For $50, we could like double the memory. And we can also say, it's still a slow machine. It's an older machine. It's a this, it's a that. But there's one aspect of it that we can do a quick fix on. That will at least add some life to it, if you're interested. New stuff. For the last couple of years, we've talked about this stuff being as new. It's not new anymore. These are common. Virtualization, cloud, the remote monitoring and management, which is how we know about that other thing, social media integration, mobile device integration. All of these, and we don't need to get into these, we don't have time, but all of these are technologies that are now priced and they have the functionality so that small, medium businesses absolutely can get advantage out of them and need to know how to do that. It used to be, especially like virtualization, was something that only larger companies would do because there was a large investment. Now it's not a large investment at all, and there's some definite availability, some value adds there that give companies good in terms of high availability, making sure your server's running, and blah, blah, blah. New technologies, device-based networks. The example that I used in one of my blog entries was the fridge at Vegas, one of the Vegas hotels. I was at a conference with my wife, and they literally had sensors that would tell if someone lifted a bottle from the fridge, and would automatically identify what it was and charge the room.
All the scotch was gone, huh?
Amazingly so. So it's kind of like you feel like you're in that Indiana Jones movie where you're trying to move the bottle of scotch and put a little bag of sand so you don't disrupt it. Now, it's actually kind of silly, but no one has to go and check out the fridge before someone checks out. They'll automatically charge your account. Now, I won't get into the details, but they ended up charging us for bottles of wine and I kid you not, condoms. Well, the details are kind of funny because there was some party pack that was on top, and my wife, we were with my mother-in-law. She just basically held this up at one point and said, well, I guess we're not going to need these for this trip, and put it down. They charged us for it. And the only reason I bring this up is to point out the key factor here is when we called the desk downstairs and we said we didn't use them, they took it off our bill without even batting an eye. They did not fight us because they recognized there are situations where it's not going to be used. Now, I'm sure someone then checked out the room and made sure that we didn't use them. And I literally said, I'm going to tell you why we didn't use them. Okay, yes, sir? My mother-in-law is with us. Okay, I'll take it off your bill, no problem. It was actually hilarious. I thought it was one of the funniest things. But that's the key. So think of it from the hotel standpoint. If the person doesn't fight the cost, they've eliminated the need for someone to check the fridge out every time a guest checks out. Think of it in terms of savings. That's huge. And as long as their staff is appropriately trained in order to handle those exceptions where they misread it, they basically agree with the customer immediately, no problem, no hassle, and then for that room, they make sure someone checks it out. The savings are ridiculously high. Ridiculously high. This is now a device-based network they have because they have, for every position in the fridge, that's one IT device for every room in that hotel. incredibly remote workforce. The death of KVM, keyboard, video, mouse. I don't need a screen. Well, I kind of got one. And you have more and more tools that are going to be audio controlled, and you've got touch for the tablet. So the traditional keyboard, video, mouse. And this is going to happen faster than you think. This is huge because it makes the whole mobile computing concept so much more interesting, and especially since the real estate is so expensive. The real estate by how much screen space does a user have versus what they can visually see. Unbeatable malware, cyber blocker. Here's where we're going to talk about XP. Is it cyber blocker or cyber locker? Did I misspell that? Anyway, there is a piece of malware out there. I think it's called either cyber blocker or cyber locker. If someone installs that inadvertently, and most of your antivirus software will protect you against it, but if they don't have it, if you install it, it will encrypt everything it could get its hands on, no matter where it is on the network. And it will encrypt it in a way that cannot be undone. I want to be real clear here. This is not something that a 13-year-old hacker came up with. It cannot be fixed. No one has figured out a way to fix it. You will be held for ransom. If your backups are part of your network, it will get to your backups. Okay? What? Crypto lock? Crypto locker. Okay. We'll update this. XP is no longer going to be supported come April. What that means is, first of all, as Microsoft and other people identify more and more security threats, because they're gonna, they're there. Same thing with Apple, same thing with Linux, everything. They continue to apply those fixes. They will stop in April of 2014. Similarly, more and more vendors of software will stop supporting XP, and that includes antivirus programs. Antivirus programs will no longer, and the reason being, it makes sense, because part of an antivirus strategy is that you keep up with the security patches from Microsoft. Because it really is a combination of those two things. If you don't patch your operating system, it doesn't tell you necessarily that the antivirus is going to protect it. So if the patches for the operating system go away, why are they going to keep upgrading the antivirus? So if you have 30 machines on your network, and one of them is an XP machine, and it still touches the internet, it still does things that allows it to be infected. It could be infected and everybody else is cool. Too bad it still goes. It still goes out and it encrypts it. And in this particular case, the company that put out this thing, their servers crashed because there were so many people trying to pay the ransom. Because they hold you for ransom. And you pay the money, and then they'll basically, their software will decrypt. And they're apparently very ethical about it. And they actually have now help desk support. I think I heard something along the line, there is now help desk support by the people who wrote this thing to help customers more efficiently pay the ransom. It's weird because it's a business. They're driven by profits and loss. It's a business. There are actually companies in Russia in particular where they are a company. They've got, there was, I saw one presentation by one security guy where he actually had pictures of the company picnic and their newsletter and all that. And that's what these guys do, is they write this stuff.
How are they getting away with this legally?
Because it's legal in Russia or whatever country they happen to be in.
Can I ask you a quick question about the death of the keyboard
Yeah.
in Google Glass? Okay, so the death of the keyboard kind of suggests that the pads that people are using are going to become obsolete too, because everybody's going to go to Google Glass.
Everybody is going to have more choices. There are going to be times where one is more valuable or more useful than the other. So the problem is going to be not so much that everybody's going to go to X, but that everybody's going to have choices.
And then are they doing something with regards to Google Glass to make it usable for people who have to wear glasses?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they've actually signed up with some prescription. I mean, these are going to be, keep in mind, they're above there. So They don't actually get in the way of your glasses, but they're not as convenient. But you're going to be able to get them with prescription glass snap-ons. One other thing I want to talk about very briefly, and then we'll wrap it up, is software as a service. All of this stuff, it used to be you bought a license, you had the license, you ran it, and all that. You're going to find more and more of these things being offered as a service, meaning as long as you pay, this gets back to the Microsoft revenue question or issue, as long as you pay a monthly annual fee, you'll be able to use the software, whether it's up in the cloud or it's on your device or anything along those lines. So the whole idea of I'm going to buy a piece of software and then I'm going to run it into the ground for 10 years or so is financially going to become more and more expensive because I think Adobe just switched. So they've got pretty much a lot of their graphic production software is subscription only. You can't actually buy the software. You're going to see a lot more of that coming up. Yep.
Does that mean that you would automatically get the next version?
Yeah, absolutely, because the vendor only has to support the latest version. They don't have to worry about, oh, you haven't upgraded to 2010 or 2013 yet, because you're automatically getting those latest features and all that. The BYOD, and this kind of gets into the security from you guys, where you guys are talking about. You know, we have this issue where we want people to do their jobs, and we have these tablets, and I'll say the iPad particularly, which really makes people able to do a lot of things dynamically and remotely and mobile and all that kind of thing, but we have no security on them. We have no idea what else they've got. We don't know what they're sharing. We don't know what they're doing. So we're going to let them be productive, but we run that risk. And this kind of gets back into the, if they have their data on another device, what can we do about it? So from a management standpoint, this is a question that's becoming more and more critical. How do we manage access? And there's no right, there's no wrong answer. But again, it gets back to which level do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy who opens the door for the people, so we're going to let them use their devices to access the information, all that kind of thing, in which case we're letting people into the network in ways that we're not directly controlling? Or do we want to increase productivity, decrease security, or do we want to control it, in which case you can make the point of we're decreasing productivity or at least increasing the cost, but we're increasing security. There's no right or wrong answer, but you have to have that discussion so that we're all on the same page as far as that goes. And Microsoft's big gamble as far as the Windows 8, jury's still out on that one. And we'll talk about applications in a second. Here's a test that I would suggest you try. Business steps is the narration test. If you were to narrate what has to be done from a business standpoint, and then you narrate the process, what people actually have to do in order to make that happen, the more convoluted this is versus this, the more obsolete you are. You're doing work that didn't necessarily have to be done. Okay? And this would be an example, of that. And I think we're going to email this PowerPoint out, so you have that. Last thing I want to talk about real quickly that we just brief through is applications. This is the worst scenario that some people will get into, and again I'll say especially manufacturing companies, is they have been using an application that they've had for 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, that has done fine, and now that application has been updated so many times that the owner of that application, the original author of that application, will not support it any way, shape, or form, and there's no clear-cut upgrade path. And yet, to redo it is a complete redo of that company's critical line of business. This is the trap that a lot of manufacturing companies are actually in right now. And to say that there's no clean way out of it is not an exaggeration. There are ways to get out of it, and we've worked with several companies to do just that. But the fact that you've done zero investment in capital and software and upgrades and all of that kind of stuff is going to catch up and bite you. And the question is, do you want it to bite you on your schedule, your terms, or do you want it to bite you when a business opportunity comes up that you simply cannot do? No way. Or a lack of security comes and bites you, or the software doesn't work and there's no one alive who knows how to fix it. All of those things are definitely doable, are definitely, can run into those. And you don't get to choose when those situations come up. So for those, what we suggest is, first of all, have a meeting with management and talk about, in very frank terms, Here's the risks we're currently facing. Do we accept that we do accept those risks because here we are. Do we want to do anything to get out of that situation? And if you say yes, but for a minimal amount of money, that's called close up shop and start a new business. But that's the discussion that needs to happen. And notice, this is not a technology discussion. This is a business discussion. And if the only people who are talking are the IT people, wrong. That's the wrong people to have and the wrong people to be making the decision. It's kind of like business continuity, disaster recovery. If your business continuity, disaster recovery plan was put together by your IT people, it's wrong. Okay? This is a business question. It just happens to be dealing with a technology topic. Cool. Thank you all very much. And thanks.
Coppedge, everybody.
Yay.